Bert Campaneris had a 19-year career, playing for the Kansas City and then the Oakland A's, Texas Rangers, and then the California Angels. He was a 6-time All-Star and a 3-time World Series champion. 6 times Bert led the league in stolen bases, including a 4-year stretch where he stole 51, 52, 55, and 62 to lead the league. Today I'm joined by my friend Drew from Clean Cheap Shots, who is a lifelong A's fan and a big fan of Bert Campaneris. Drew, thanks for joining me. It's nice to have you. How are things going out there in Nebraska?
Hey, things are going great. It's college football season, and thank you for having me.
I was watching one of your videos, and you were talking about Bert Campaneris, and I have to admit, I didn't know anything about the guy, to be honest with you. And you had mentioned that there was a game where he played every position, and I had never heard that story either, so I want to talk about that. But first, maybe you can tell me your background, why you became an A's fan, and I'm assuming you still are an A's fan. You're wearing the gear, so give us a little bit of a background there, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, I became an A's fan when I was really very young. My mom used to buy me Kellogg's Frosted Flakes, and you may remember you used to get the cards in there. And for whatever reason, I got Bert Campaneris, I got Reggie Jackson, I got Catfish Hunter, and just looking at those uniforms and the colors and the I don't know, they were characters, and so I just kind of fell in love with them. And so then I would, have my breakfast, try to eat as much Frosted Flakes as I could, and then run a couple blocks over to my grandma's place and go, "Hey, I didn't have breakfast. You got any Frosted Flakes?" And I'd eat her Frosted Flakes, and then I'd pull that card out, and so I was manipulating extended family just so I could get more cards, and hoping that I'd get more of the green and gold of the A's. And that's awesome. How it started.
So you were not able to see any games on TV. You were just a fan because of the cards.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah, growing up in rural Nebraska, I remember only having 2 stations, ABC and CBS, and NBC on maybe once in a while, depending on, we could get it in. But
so were you able to pull in any broadcast of MLB teams?
No.
Wow.
It was about reading the paper, reading about the players, and really just looking at those baseball cards and the few stories and cartoons that were on the back. And
see, this is where I think the modern hobby, where Topps is missing out, because the modern cards are so pricey. What young kid has the money to buy some of these chrome cards? And I mean, they're expensive. They're dollars per pack. And back in the day, it was 10 cents, or I don't remember what it was when I first started buying cards, but I remember I could save up for a couple of weeks and buy a whole box of cards. Now, granted, they were poor quality compared to today, but and it was the middle of the beginning of the junk wax era. But the cards is really what hooked me too. The cards hooked me first, and then I became a fan and watched on TV and did the reading like you're talking about.
And the stats on the back actually helped me become more interested in math, and helped me understand math a little bit better. How did you get a batting average? Where does that come from? And so it was educational as well.
Yeah, great point. So you mentioned that the cards, you pulled a Bert Campaneris when you were a kid, and you started following the A's, at least through the paper. Do you remember the first time you actually got to see the A's play? How long was that?
For some reason, there was a game that was broadcast sometime, I want to say late 70s, early 80s. I remember Tony Armas was on the team, and he hit a home run in the game. And that was the first time I'd ever really seen him.
Yeah, he was a power hitter.
Yeah. And so, other than that, I can't really remember games that I started watching on TV until probably the 80s, when, ESPN started broadcasting a lot of those games.
Yeah, and then This Week in Baseball. I'm sure you were a This Week in Baseball fan.
Oh, yeah, Mel Allen, right?
Every week, man. Yeah, Mel Allen. That song, I can't get that song out of my head. Yeah.
Minnesota manager Gene Mauch hopes to win with a 5-man infield. Astro fans hope to win with a little voodoo on the big red machine of Sparky Anderson. And George Foster on a rampage with his magic bat. The Texas Rangers turn a smart double play the hard way. All-Star Game flashbacks. 1933. Babe Ruth set the pace with the Classic's first round tripper. And the blasting barrage continues in the 1977 All-Star Game. Stay tuned for headlines and highlights of This Week in Baseball.
So you and I talked beforehand. We had a phone call a week or so ago, and we were talking about this. And you had mentioned Pat Venditti, who is he from Nebraska? So he went to Creighton.
He went to Creighton. I don't know where he's from.
Okay. So Pat is a switch pitcher who, in case anybody doesn't know, who did play some major league games. I don't know where he is today. I'll look him up on Baseball Reference after and share his stats. But Bert Campaneris was ambidextrous and pitched both right and left-handed in a game in 1962, which I did not know. Pat Venditti was the first one I'd ever heard of who was a switch pitcher. But I had shared with you that my son was a switch pitcher. He's ambidextrous and pitched both left and right-handed. And it's a pretty rare thing. So Bert Campaneris, his real name is Dagoberto Campaneris. But, of course, we, mash that name down to Bert Campaneris. And he came up in 1964, and his very first at-bat, he hit a home run off Jim Cott, which I don't know how many guys have done that. Me personally, I remember Jason Hayward, his first at-bat as a Brave, hit a home run. I know that there have been plenty of guys throughout history, but Bert Campaneris was not necessarily a power hitter. So for him to hit a home run in his first at bat, and then he ended up hitting 2 home runs in that first game. So off to a great start. Well, it turns out that homering in your first plate appearance is not as rare as I imagined. It has happened 137 times in history. I'm sharing the list here, and those names you see marked with a caret actually homered on the first pitch they saw. It's a much smaller list, but still adds up to 31, Bert Campaneris among them. However, Campaneris was only the second player to hit 2 home runs in a debut game after the St. Louis Browns' Bob Neiman, who did it in 1951. The A's of that era, they were very successful. I think people who may be significantly younger than you or I don't realize how successful of a franchise the A's were in the early 70s.
Yeah, well, before Kansas City, of course, they were the Philadelphia A's. And so they moved to Kansas City, and they began to really draft some very good ball players, again, Gene Tennis, Bert Campaneris, Reggie Jackson. Rick Monday was the number 1 overall pick, the first number 1 overall pick of any MLB draft. Later to become famous with the Dodgers and the whole saving the flag incident, of course. But yeah, they won World Series in 72, 73, and 74. And I read an article not so long ago that Charlie Finley once said of Bert Campaneris, he said, I had Reggie Jackson, I had Catfish Hunter, I had Raleigh Fingers, I had Vita Blue, I had all these stars, but it was Bert Campaneris that kept the team together and kept it moving. And that's quite a tribute coming from Charlie Finley.
Just to add some background to Drew's comment, when ESPN produced a biography on Charlie Finley after his passing, he was described as a loudmouth, a tyrant, and a miser. Not the kind of flowery language you usually see when someone dies. Finley grew up poor in Alabama and then worked in Gary, Indiana in the steel mills after high school. He sold insurance after that before contracting tuberculosis, which was a major turning point in his life. Finley was in the hospital for 2.5 years with TB. It was a pivotal moment in his life. It was during this incredibly long hospital stay that he envisioned a plan to sell disability insurance to doctors. His idea made him a millionaire before he was 40 years old. After attempts to buy other teams, he finally did acquire the Kansas City Athletics, but almost immediately he became an enemy of the people who worked for him. Finley was dragged before the National Labor Relations Board to answer charges of employee harassment. Ken Harrelson called Finley a menace to baseball and was released. He even angered politicians. Senator Stuart Symington called Finley one of the most disreputable characters ever to enter the American sports scene. When the A's lost Jim Catfish Hunter to free agency, Finley began dismantling the ball club, selling off players. Almost to a man, the players despised him. Vida Blue, while still playing for the A's, told reporters, quote, "I hope the next breath Charlie Finley takes is his last. I hope he falls flat on his face and dies of polio." Can you imagine how much you'd have to hate your boss to say something like that while still employed by him? On September 8th, 1965, they had Campaneris night, and I'm not sure why they had Campaneris night. I mean, he was still a very new player. I don't know the story behind it, but they had Bert Campaneris night.
Well, the story is simple. Charlie Finley wanted to have more revenue that night, and so he promoted Bert Campaneris to play every single position, and that included pitcher, where he threw left-handed to left-handed hitters and right-handed to right-handed pitchers. But yeah,
awesome.
That was really the only reason they did it.
Bert began that game by starting at shortstop. Then he went to second base in the second inning, then third base, then left field, center field, and right field, then back to the infield playing first base in the seventh. In the eighth inning, he pitched, and then in the ninth inning, he was behind the plate as the catcher. In the bottom of the ninth, he collided with catcher Ed Kirkpatrick and injured his shoulder and had to leave the game.
One thing I'll add to that is in March, I think it was March 12th, 2015, during spring training, Will Ferrell, the comedian, actually played in 5 Major League Baseball games, playing all 9 positions in honor of Bert Campaneris. And I happened to be in the Phoenix area for spring training games, and so I did catch one of those games that he did that in.
You probably know by now, Will Ferrell is here in an A's uniform.
So there he is, Will Ferrell in a Mariners uniform. Looks every bit of a big leaguer, doesn't he?
Will Ferrell's going to have to field.
This is yesterday in spring training in Arizona. Will Ferrell played in 5 games for each team. So he played on 10 teams. He played every single position plus pinch hitter. There you see him also being the third base coach for the Chicago Cubs. He struck out on 3 pitches when he batted as a pinch hitter for the Cubs. And this is a pretty crazy story. So he started the morning in Mesa, Arizona, then went to Tempe, then Scottsdale, then he had to get on to a helicopter and fly to Glendale, Arizona. There he is playing for Arizona, made a couple of plays in the field, as you can see, making some throws, didn't get any action when he was at third base for the Reds. All this being done for 2 organizations, raising money. There he is landing in center field in a helicopter. So they're raising money for Cancer for College and Stand Up to Cancer. Of course, Stand Up to Cancer, a charity that we've supported here at City. There he is playing catcher. He only played 1 batter as catcher, and they did an intentional walk. So he did officially play the position. He made 1 appearance as pitcher and got the player to ground out, making the play to first base. And then take a look at this as he ended his day there playing for San Diego with the home run that he had no chance on. Just a really great day for baseball, and again, raising a lot of funds. This is going to be turned into a TV special, in fact. But a fun day in Arizona playing for those 10 different teams.
So Bert Campaneris was known for his speed. He was a stolen base champion for a number of years.
That's right.
Do you know
And
his?
Gordon, he's 14th all time on the stolen base leaders chart.
Wow. In the final game of 1972, the A's had already clinched the division, and Bert planned to sit out the game. He was leading the league in stolen bases by 2 going into the day. After the A's broadcasters found out that Dave Nelson of the Texas Rangers had stolen 3 bases in his game, Campaneris entered the A's game in the 4th inning as a pinch runner and promptly stole second, then stole third to take the title. I'm wearing this Tigers jersey not because of what happened in 1972, but because the Tigers are playing a wild card game today. But there was a dust-up with the Tigers in the 1972 ALCS. So he was 3 for 3 when Larry LeGros for the Tigers hit him with a pitch, presumably under the direction of Billy Martin. And Bert, it hurt him. It hit his ankle, and he threw the bat at the pitcher, and Billy Martin came storming out of the dugout, ready to throw down, which, no surprise, Billy Martin, if there's anybody who loved to fight, it was that dude. But Billy Martin came out, charging out of the dugout, hunting for Bert.
Doing the pitching for the Tigers. He's the 4th Tiger pitcher. Oh, did he hit him? He did. Look out! Campaneris threw the bat, as you could see, right over the head.
I'll tell you what, they're having a little trouble keeping Billy Martin away from him. Ike Brown just went out and broke the bat.
Well, excitement aplenty.
You know,
the umpire's holding Billy Martin. He's trying to get to Campaneris, and
it's unusual. There was not a punch thrown. Everybody went out, and the umpires put a sort of a DMZ zone.
In regards to Bert throwing his bat at the pitcher, he said, quote, "My ankle hurts so bad. I knew he was going to throw at me, but people tell me it's better to go and fight. I don't know. I just lost my temper." Bert got ejected along with the pitcher, but he was also suspended for the rest of the ALCS that year.
But he was allowed to play in the World Series. The commissioner, initially he was suspended for the remainder, of the series, the playoff World Series, but the commissioner stepped in and said, hold on, we're going to go ahead and allow him to play during the World Series, and then your suspension will be at the beginning of the following year.
And I think the commissioner was Bowie Kuhn at that point.
I believe you're correct.
And they ended up winning the World Series against the Reds. Drew, in the 1973 World Series against the Mets, the argument could be made that he should have won the MVP. I was looking on Baseball Reference. So the MVP went to Reggie. And if you look at the stats, I mean, Reggie did outperform him by the measurable stats for offensive performance, but Bert was... So the championship win probability added is the CWPA, some calculated stat. They had Bert at 20.28% and Reggie at 14. So I don't know what goes into that calculation. It must not be only offensive numbers, it must be defense and stolen bases and things of that nature. But statistically, you could argue that Bert should have won that World Series MVP, but he didn't seem to be all that upset about it.
Well, they say the championships are one up the middle, and Bert Campaneris did have a fine defensive series, so I'm sure that plays into it.
Why don't you tell me the story about your memorabilia that you've got there?
Yeah, well, so this is my Bert Campaneris ball. He wrote World Series 72, 73, and 74 on it. Unfortunately, I did not have a ball with me, and it's starting to bleed a little bit there. As you can see, it's not a very good ball. It's not a Rawlings. It's a cheaper ball, but I had to buy that at the stadium. I bought that during spring training down in the Phoenix area where the A's where the A's have their spring training. And so Bert Campaneris, along with Raleigh Fingers and a few others, work for the Fergie Jenkins Foundation, or at least they contribute their time. And so they can often be found on the concourse during spring training games, just sitting at a picnic table. And so I walked up, and well, I didn't walk up. I actually stopped and I looked the first time, and I thought, that's Bert Campaneris. You know, I had this deer in the headlight look.
Mm-hmm.
Once I collected myself and stopped hyperventilating, I walked up and I knew that I had to get an autographed ball from Bert Campaneris. So
awesome. So are you still an A's fan even after what happened this year?
Yet to be decided. I mean, it's difficult. It really is difficult. I can only imagine what the New York Giants and the Brooklyn Dodgers went through, you know, having their teams ripped from the city. And that's what Oakland's going through. Now, I'm not from Oakland. I don't have any ties to Oakland at all. But I've always been an Oakland A's fan. And it's going to be hard, at least for me, it's going to be really difficult to cheer for a team that might be called, I don't know, Las Vegas A's.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. And I've been a little probably disgruntled over the last couple of years with the Oakland A's, ownership selling off some of these players for very little.
Well, Braves country would welcome you if you know, I mean, we have Sean Murphy, we have Matt Olson.
Yeah.
So come on over, man. The
water's
fine.
It might be time. It might be time. I've always been a very loyal guy, but it is really difficult for somebody that's an A's fan or maybe a Pirates fan to really want to, you know, fork over hard-earned money to that kind of an ownership.
The Pirates at least have what many believe is the best stadium in the league. Yeah. The Coliseum was awful. Have you ever had a chance to go there?
No, I haven't.
We did a trip to California. It was the 4th of July-ish, right around that time frame. And we went to San Francisco, and my daughter, who is not a baseball fan, it turned into a 16-inning game, which, of course, for her. And my gosh, it was freezing. It was freezing in July. Unbelievably cold. And then the next day, we went to Oakland for a day game, and we absolutely cooked. It was 90-something degrees and just fried. But the difference between AT&T and Oakland was just night and day. I mean, at AT&T, you could get, you know, mahi tacos and whatever you wanted. And we walk into Oakland Coliseum, and it's like, you want a hot dog or you want a pretzel? Like, that's it. Those are your options. And the Coliseum, I mean, it's just the way the stadiums were built back then. Very narrow concourses, just completely different. So those fans, I say all that to say, the fans showed up. Like, they were still there, and they were awful. I give the fans a ton of credit, because living in that area, it would be so easy just to be a San Francisco fan. The flashy new ballpark. You know, they had talent. They had a lot of talent. Bochy won? What did he win? 3 World Series over 5 years. So I give Oakland A's fans a lot of credit there, but it was not a great ballpark at all.
Well, I feel bad for the Oakland fan base as a whole, because they lost the Oakland Raiders twice, because once they went to Los Angeles and now they're in Las Vegas. Now they lost the Golden State Warriors, who moved across the bay to San Francisco, and the Oakland A's are gone. And I guess I'm a little surprised the commissioner, well, maybe I'm not surprised, but the commissioner, I feel like, should have done something here. The A's, they really don't have a plan. Sure, they're going to play in Sacramento here for the next, couple of seasons, but Las Vegas, it's not a done deal. You know, there's nothing that's been signed. And I don't know how you can do that. I don't know how you can operate that way. And, you know, with some of these trades, Gordon, and I know you're a Braves fan, but, you know, Matt Olson and Murphy, the A's had a couple of years of control left, and they didn't get a lot for those two ball players, who are both Gold Glove ball players.
Yeah, Christian Pache. I don't even remember who else we gave up.
And and Pache was waived by the A's. He's not even on he's not with the A's anymore. I don't know.
No, he landed somewhere. I saw him recently. I can't remember with who, maybe the Mets, but great defender, but he can't hit. Never could hit. And I think even as an A, he couldn't hit. But
Shea Langeliers, the catcher for the A's,
yep.
Yeah, I believe came over in one of those two trades. But aside from that,
yeah, I'm sure it's frustrating.
Well, it's been like that for many years. If you think about it, all the players that came through Oakland that were never re-signed or got traded away early.
It's easy to poo-poo the commissioner in a lot of cases, but I do think in this case it's legit. I mean, he clearly is an advocate for the owners and not the health of the game itself. And I think all of his decisions are made for the owners, and not long-term health of the game.
I agree. And you think back to the 1970s, though, I will point out that the commissioner actually stopped some of the trades that Charlie Finley was trying to make.
Wow. I don't remember a commissioner stepping in to veto a trade. That's got to be a rare occurrence.
Well, Charlie Finley was trying to sell off these players for, a box of jerseys and balls. I mean, it was ridiculous. Vita Blue, I believe, was one of them.
Well, Drew, do you have anything else you want to share about Bert?
Yeah, I want to point out that, Bert Campaneris holds the A's franchise record for games played, I believe, at 1795 and hits at 1,882 and also at bats. And I think those are things they're important to point out. I mean, he was a longtime contributor of that franchise. I think he also led the American League in putouts 3 different times as well. We addressed his defensive skills a little bit earlier, so I'd be remiss not to mention that.
Anything else, Drew?
No, I think that's it. I really appreciate you having me, though, Gordon.
Man, I'm so glad to finally get you on camera. I love your channel. It's you always make me laugh. For one, whether it's you chewing 40-year-old baseball gum or standing out in a cornfield, it's always something different, and I enjoy it and appreciate it.
Thank you. Keep growing your collection, card farmers.
I want to thank Drew for his time today and for sharing his passion for Bert Campaneris. Thank you for your time. Take care.
Will we be done by that Braves game tonight?
I don't know if I want to see that Braves game tonight. It was ugly. I don't know if you watched it, but they set a San Diego record for 15 strikeouts against us last night.
That's just one game.
Just one game. Yep. It's not the end of the world. Thank goodness.
It's a 3-game series, isn't it?
What's that?
3-game series, right?
Yeah, thank goodness. That one game deal was no bueno.
No, that I don't know why they did that. Anything can happen in one game. It's not fair.
Yeah, not baseball. Football, I get it.
Yeah,
not baseball for sure. I was talking to Mike, the sports history collector. He and I met on Sunday, and we had a long chat. And I'm on YouTube every day, but if it's not like I have my subscribe list, and other than that, like if it's not put in my face, I almost never really search for something. So the YouTube algorithm is pretty good about finding things that I'm interested in, whether it's whatever, cave diving or something like that, which I don't do, but for some reason I like watching the videos of it. And so YouTube has kind of figured out like what I'll click on, and they keep feeding me that. And so it's hard to find guys who have other channels, and you've always been really good about sharing that. Like I never would have found Hugo if it wasn't for you. So things like that, I think it's really important.
Yeah. Have you watched Corey's Hammer 44's last video?
I did. Mm-hmm.
On running? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So whenever he released that is when I left a comment. Maybe it wasn't as long ago as I think, but I'd left him a comment that I was like, yeah, we have a lot of the same interests. And he probably took that as a stalking kind of comment.
Well, he's a great guy. He really is. I really got to know him pretty well at the National. That's a great place to meet people. And I know that can be difficult, when you have lives, jobs, family, all that.